The most important event of the 1958 World Cup was the emergence of one of the greatest players in the history of football. 17-year-old Pelé showed from the beginning that football runs in his veins like blood. Sweden was the host and West Germany was the champion of the previous round along with Austria, Czechoslovakia, England, France, Hungary, Northern Ireland, Scotland, Soviet Union, Wales, and Yugoslavia were the European representatives in this cup. And from the American continent, Argentina, Brazil, Paraguay, and Mexico participated in this cup. The tournament format was very similar to today's World Cup format, with the difference that 2 points were still awarded to the winning team for each win. And if the points of the second and third teams in the group stage were equal, the playoff game was held. Also, the participating teams were still 16 teams, which were divided into 4 groups. West Germany, Northern Ireland, Czechoslovakia, and Argentina were present in the first group. West Germany, the champion of the previous period, was still very strong and had no problem with promotion. But Northern Ireland was the surprise of this group. Their points were equal to Czechoslovakia and went to the playoff to determine the promoted team. This game is still one of the most unexpected results in the history of the World Cup. In the end, Northern Ireland advanced and Czechoslovakia and Argentina were eliminated from the tournament. France, Yugoslavia, Paraguay, and Scotland competed in the second group. In this group, 31 goals were exchanged between the teams, 6 of which were the share of French striker Just Fontaine. Finally, France and Yugoslavia went to the next stage with 4 points. It was the only group in which there was no playoff. Mexico, Hungary, Wales, and Sweden were in Group 3. Most of Hungary's stars, such as Sandro Kocsis and Franz Puskas, had left their country after the unsuccessful uprising against the communist regime, and Hungary no longer had its former power. Mexicans in their second match, against Hungary, scored the first goal for Mexico in the history of the World Cup. They had lost their previous 9 World Cup matches without scoring a goal. To date, no team has lost 9 consecutive World Cup matches. But the main surprise of this group was Wales, who beat Hungary 2-1 in the playoff game. Soviet Union, England, Brazil, and Austria were the teams of Group 4. England had been weakened by the loss of several players in the Munich air disaster. The match between England and Brazil in this group was the first 0-0 match in the history of the World Cup. In the end, Brazil won the group without conceding a single goal and went to the quarter-finals along with the Soviet Union, which defeated England in the playoffs. In the quarter-finals, Just Fontaine continued his scoring streak for France, scoring 2 more goals to help the team beat Northern Ireland 4-0. Brazil, Sweden, and West Germany were the other teams that reached the semi-finals. The first semi-final game pits host Sweden against previous World Cup champions West Germany. Swedish players viciously sent off Erik Juskowiak. This was the first time that a German player was sent off in an international match. In addition, German striker Fritz Walter was injured, and since substitutions were not allowed in football until 1970, Germany spent a large part of the game with 9 players and eventually lost 3-1. The game between France and Brazil was balanced until the end of the first half, but in the 36th minute, Robert Jonquet was injured and France continued the game with 10 players. This caused Brazil to dominate the game and they were able to beat France 5-2 with Pelé's hat-trick and reach the final. Brazil and Sweden played the final on June 29, 1958, at Resunda Stadium in Solna. Since the uniforms of both teams were yellow, Brazil had to use its second uniform. Initially, they were supposed to play in white, but this idea was rejected by the fear of the Brazilian players and the memory of Maracanazo, and the Brazilians wore blue in this game. Pelé was a striker for Brazil at the age of 17. and Nils Lidholm was the Kapitan of Sweden at the age of almost 36. The game has started. The Swedes didn't have to wait long for a goal, and Swedish captain Nils Lidholm scored the first goal. But this victory lasted only 5 minutes and Vava was able to score the equalizing goal for Brazil. In the 32nd minute, Vava scored a goal very similar to his first goal to end the first half with Brazil 2-1. In the 55th minute, the newly discovered jewel of Brazilian football showed its value and increased the difference to 2 goals. 13 minutes later, Zagallo scored the 4th goal for Brazil. The job was almost over and Simonson's goal in the 80th minute only lessened the bitterness of the defeat for the host. However, the young and motivated Pelé did not give up and scored the 5th goal for Brazil in the 90th minute. In this way, Brazil celebrated its first championship in the World Cup with authority and a result of 5-2. This final and this World Cup set many records that still stand today. 17-year-old Pelé is the youngest player who played in the World Cup final, scored a goal, and won. Nils Lidholm is the oldest player to score in a World Cup final at 35 years and 263 days. The most number of goals scored in the World Cup final with 7 goals. The biggest goal difference in the World Cup final with 3 goals. The first World Cup final with teams from 2 different continents. The only World Cup hosted in Europe in which a non-European team won. Also, French Just Fontaine, the best scorer of the games, has scored the most goals in World Cup history with 13 goals. The games were watched by 819,810 and 126 goals were scored in 35 games. This was the beginning of the brilliance of the Brazilians in the World Cup and a relief to the Maracanazo wound. More importantly, the emergence of a memorable star that football has never seen before, Pelé. Subscribe to the Final Matches channel to talk more about Pelé in Brazil.